Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I thought that was a really interesting conversation tonight about a gentleman who has really gone through incredible struggles, leaving his home country, coming to Canada, learning the language, and excelling in business, in life, in society, and wanting to give back and wanting to inspire people. And it is stories like that that have inspired me to want to make a bigger contribution to our community, to our society. I have just come through 5 weeks of campaigning to become the mayor of Mississauga, which I wasn't successful in. Surprise, surprise. But it was a very interesting experience. And I've talked a little bit about some of my perceptions of that experience. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes now, if I could, just talking a little bit about what I learned through the whole process, and some takeaways from the process. So the first is that I think that I was able to, as probably every candidate was, build connections within our society. And I think connections with different people from different walks of life, from different parts of our community, from different religions, from different geographical areas, from different ethnic groups, from different colors of the spectrum, from different occupational backgrounds, from different age groups, I think is really helpful. And some of those connections were with voters, and some of those connections were with other candidates. And I've spoken about this before, but there was a young Muslim candidate running for mayor, 19 years old, wearing a hijab, who is someone who, I don't run into 19-year-old students that often. And to talk with her at length and listen to her, communicate about her passion for the city, her struggles as a student, her struggles as someone from not a marginalized group, a ethnic group, was really interesting and rewarding. There was another gentleman who was an alternative musician and a tree hugger, environmentalist, and he was very passionate, very articulate, and very funny. Excellent to listen to and get to know. I ended up, meeting numerous different people at events. Met with a couple of priests and a couple of pastors, and talked about what was going on in the city. Making connections in our community is wonderful. It's a pleasure, and it is an incredible opportunity to get to know what different people are thinking, what our community is all about. And so I encourage all of you to think about building those opportunities to build connection. I was at a lobster fest, ended up having some incredible conversations with people as I was raising money, as I was campaigning, and as I was eating lobster. The second one, I think, is strengthening our civic engagement. I think as people start discussing the things that are important to us as we build a better community, I think we end up, by definition, building a better community. And the wider we can get that group of people involved in that discussion, I think the better. And I've complained about this, and I apologize, but I'm going to complain about it again. I think way too often, some of the groups restricted the number of people that could attend those events and the number of people that could voice their opinions, and then ended up having canned question and answers rather than discussions or debates. When really what we wanted, I thought, was to have a discussion or debate rather than just question and answer, canned question and answers with written responses and written questions that people got ahead of time, which was a little bit unsatisfying. And so when I think about how one strengthens civic engagement, it's really interesting. There was this concept about intimate cerebral exchange in a book that was written that described these clubs in Scotland that were, at the turn of the century, 2 centuries ago, I guess, and primarily men's clubs. So maybe not appropriate completely not appropriate in today's society. But they were these clubs where people would get together and they would argue intensely about different topics, whether they be economics or politics or democracy, things like that. And then they'd drink afterwards and be friends. And the author went back through some of the times in our civilization's history where we've had some of the biggest movements forward in our thinking and our thought process and our philosophies, whether they be on economics and or democracy or politics or whatever that topic. And it's often coming from this time where there's intense discussion and argument, but then also camaraderie, where again you are competitors potentially, but you're not enemies. And I think that's key. And this individual described it as the key to success is being able to argue and then have a drink. I worry that we didn't have that in this election, that we got personal sometimes, or at least some people did way too quickly. They used surrogates behind the scenes to get very nasty. And because of that, one candidate who ended up being successful in becoming the mayor didn't even participate because she was so abused and insulted. And then at the same time, we kept the conversation too narrow. And I wonder what's the benefit of that? And maybe it is because people want a horse race and they want to focus in on the top contenders. But by doing so, I think we really restrict our ability to get new ideas and to include other people and to build civic engagement. And, in the end, 25% turnout is absolutely nothing to be proud about. In fact, we should be ashamed that that's the limit. 1 in 4 people that we can motivate to be engaged in our democratic process. It's pretty discouraging. The third thing is, I think that we did talk a lot about a need for change. And it was fascinating that at discussion after discussion, debate after debate, even the organizers opened up by saying we, have tax increases that are too high. We have housing affordability that is too unaffordable. We have crime that is escalating. We have congestion that is only getting worse. We have transit that's not being invested in. Even the intro from the organizers spelt a fairly damning report card for our community. And I do think that we were able to, and I hope I was part of that process and contributed to it, to set an agenda for change, for reform of what's going on in the city, because I think we desperately need it. And if we don't do it, and we have same old, I think it's going to be a real problem and a real disaster for Mississauga that has lost people and will continue to lose people because people can't afford to live here. They don't feel safe living here, and the taxes are too high. Taxes for a comparable house in Mississauga are twice what they are in Toronto. Why? We don't have the tax base. We don't get the funding that we deserve. I'm worried that we don't have those leaders that in the past have spoken up for us the way they need to and should, such that according to Metamorphosis Group, we get $864 million less than we deserve from the provincial government for funding of social services. Dead last of all urban centers in Ontario, according to that group. So I think that this vision for change that I was able to talk about, that other people were able to talk about, that we, I think, put on the civic agenda, I think is key. So what's next for me? I think number one, I'm going to continue to advocate for these issues that I believe are critically important. I'm going to do that via my radio show, which is a wonderful platform for interviewing people and bringing forth ideas and then summing up at the end of my shows how I feel about things and what I think needs to get done. I think I'll also probably be doing that within the community in different ways, in different aspects. I'm going to try to take this community engagement that I've been able to establish and grow it and fertilize it and cultivate it and see if we can build something out of it. I have learned some lessons in regards to the importance of starting early, of raising money, of creating an organization. And it's very difficult to do all that when you're not a existing city councillor or part of a party. I think that the Liberal Party played an undue role. I think it was inappropriate for senior political people to from provincial parties to endorse people in a municipal election. I think that should be beneath them, and I think it's inappropriate meddling in municipal affairs. I frankly think it's inappropriate that city councilors could keep their jobs, get paid, keep their title, expect to be on stage and introduced as a councilor, and then still run for mayor. I think that Carolyn Parrish did the right thing by resigning. And I think the others that did not took advantage of the situation. And I don't think it would be, I've used this example before, that I think Charles Sousa would have made potentially a great mayoralty candidate. Why is it that he would have had to have resigned his position before running and the city councilors didn't? I think it's an aberration where the rules were written for a general election where it was obviously understood that a person couldn't be a city councilor and a mayoralty candidate at the same time. The rules were not written contemplating a by-election where they were already a existing city councilor. And then that, I think, comes to the last thing, that I do think that having this platform, this radio show where I get to interview different people, and I'm going to just focus on Mississauga politics. Most of my topics are of provincial or national or international scope, and I've really enjoyed speaking about the war in Eastern Europe, about not that I've enjoyed it, but it's been interesting. The Middle East, issues in Asia Pacific, issues in the Arctic, so geopolitical issues as well as economic issues federally and provincially, and understand what's going on in other regions of Canada. So I'll do all of that, but I'll also spend a little bit more time than I have in the past focusing in on issues of critical importance to Mississauga. So I want to thank all those people that have listened to me and hope that some of those that didn't listen to me might give me a chance in the future. I want to congratulate again Carolyn Parrish. I think that she did run a good campaign. And I think that it was regrettable that she bowed out of the debates or felt that she had to bow out of those debates, because I think it would have been really helpful for the people of Mississauga to have heard what she had to say about those issues over the course of time. And I think that would have generated greater interest. And I think our turnout would have been higher. But maybe it served her well, which is to my detriment. But in the end, the people voted, and the people are always right. I think we got some challenges, some big challenges in Mississauga. And we've talked about them. Taxes are too high. Houses are unaffordable. Crime is escalating. Congestion is there, and it's going to get worse. We need investment desperately in transit. But I also think, as I've talked about, that we've lost the vision of how great Mississauga could and should be, how it could be a wonderful city on the water in the Great Lakes, how we could have an incredible waterfront. And just this past week, you probably heard 2 different reports came out about Toronto's waterfront and studying the things that have gone wrong and what they can do right. Have we done that in Mississauga? We should. I presented a couple of ideas for what I think we could do. We need to get that vision for what Mississauga could and should be, for what Toronto could and should be, what the greater Toronto area could and should be. And I worry we don't have that right now. And so if I can play a small part in trying to challenge people to that, and then also suggesting some answers to that, then I will feel like I've made a contribution to society and a contribution to my community. And so, I think that the book that we just discussed, the life we just discussed, was fascinating. And I hope that I can play a role that is just an iota of the immense influence that our interviewee today contributed to society. I'd like to do something the same, or just something. Anyway, that's our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Crombie. I'm on every night on Saga 960 at 6 p.m. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videos are on my website, briancrombie.com. Thanks. Good night, everybody.